My name is May Kitio. I'll be taking you through today's webinar, which is covering ArcGIS Insights. So for today's session, we're going to cover a couple of things. The first one is I'm going to introduce you to what ArcGIS Insights is. We're going to look at the capabilities, and then we'll definitely have a demo session where I'll be demonstrating on how to access the application and how to do exploratory analysis on the platform. Oh, that's a tough word. And then finally, we'll also be able to share the insights workbook that we'll have created on the chat box. So we'll make this as interactive as possible. As we go on, feel comfortable to post the chats. You don't have to wait up to the end of the session to start posting the questions in the chat box. Okay. For the presentation structure, we'll start with slides, then we'll do a demo, then we'll come back to the slides, and then we'll do the final demo, which is basically sharing what we'll have created. Thank you so much. So we'll get started. When you're talking about ArcGIS Insights, it's a very new application that we introduced in 2015 with the release of ArcGIS 10.5. And the capabilities of the application is that it's a web-based app that we are pushing for analytics. And the power of the application is the fact that you're able to do on-the-fly analytics. So what we are doing is we are bringing in location intelligence to you, and we are making it very easy to use. So for the Insights interface, we'll be using the web version of the application, but the application has 3 different versions. So you can use the web application, you can use the desktop version, and you can also use the same application can also be accessed on your enterprise system. So if for those of you who are running on ArcGIS Enterprise, you still have access to it. For those of you who are running on ArcGIS Online, it runs on both portals. And then you also have the flexibility of running it within your desktop if you're not comfortable with using the web-based application. So some of the capabilities of the application as we go on is the fact that we are now giving access to enterprise databases. So the power of the system is that you're doing analytics on the web, but you're having access to all the enterprise databases that you can think of, from Microsoft SQL for those who are using Microsoft SQL. For those in finance, if you're using SAP, then the system is purely integrated with that system as well. For those who are using traditional ways of storing data, which is very common, Microsoft Excel, then it also allows that. It's very compatible with spreadsheets as well. And that's one of the capabilities of the application, the fact that you can pull data from different data streams, regardless of where it's hosted. So talk of big data, talk of small data, which is on an Excel sheet, then that is also something that the application can handle very easily, and it also allows you to consume the data very fast and create analytics out of that data set. The other capability of the app, again, is it supports relationships. So think of it as a way of, for example, you have 2 different types of data sets, right? You have one on an Excel sheet, you have another one which is a GIS file. So within the same platform, you can actually do table relationships. For those who've worked with databases, the joins and the relates are now also able to be done on this same application. So for the app, I'd mentioned that it runs on desktop. You can use also on online and also on the enterprise system. And the different sources of data can come from location-enabled data or tabular data. So when you're talking about location-enabled data, these are already processed GIS files. So when you're talking about data in real scenarios, what happens is the system, any GIS system, interprets what is on the physical environment and puts it on the system. But how it does that is dependent on what the feature is. So a good example is when you're talking about land parcels, or you're talking about counties, how the system interprets that is it does that as polygons. And that's what we're calling spatial data. And then if you're talking about rivers and roads, the system handles that as linear data, because this is continuous data. And that's how it interprets things like the roads that you're talking about. And on the system, we are calling it line features. And then finally, you have things like points. So when you're talking about points is when you bring in X, Y, and any point on the Earth's surface has a unique X, Y. So think of it as a town. If you're taking coordinates of a town, you probably take an X, Y. Or if you're taking coordinates of a school, depending on the scale, then I think someone needs to mute their mic. Okay. So if you're talking of school, then that's X, Y. So when you're talking about location-enabled data, we're talking about point, lines, and polygons. The application can actually consume that. And then the other bit that it can also consume is tabular data. So this is data that's probably in a table, but is not yet location enabled. So if you have data that's in an Excel sheet, and let's say you have XY columns to it, you can actually pull it directly into the application. So you don't have to go through the method of converting it to a GIS file and then pushing it to the application. It consumes Excel worksheets directly on the platform. So when you're talking of it, what you're seeing on the slide is the different capabilities that the application, that the web, that Insights can handle, and these are basically screenshots from the different charts that it can actually create for you, from link charts, which we are actually introducing into this platform. And link charts actually allow you to understand if there's a relation between a couple of fields in your table or in your data set. So for example, if you're, for example, talking of market insights, and you're a store and you want to understand which generation, are we talking about millennials, are we talking about generation X, are we talking about generation Z, which ones of them actually buy handbags, which ones buy sunglasses. So within the platform, it can actually explore such relationships. And that's why for the demo, we'll actually focus on exploring analytics and how the platform can actually address such questions you might have within your data set. So for the other very powerful chart that you can also come up with is a heat chart. A heat chart is where you're actually able to understand how, for example, sales are distributed across a certain period of time, or if you're talking about people in conservation, how's your tree inventory, or how's your bird sightings. So depending on whichever industry, all these charts are actually can actually be created from that same platform. We'll actually look at how to do some of this. The power of the platform, again, is the fact that you're exploring both spatial and non-spatial data, which is why we are calling it a self-service analytics. As soon as you drag a field to the application, as we'll see, then it actually generates for you charts and graphs depending on your preference of what you want to create. And then just to emphasize that the data sets for the different data sources, it can actually integrate a database, GIS files, and spreadsheets. That's the power of the platform. The fact that you not only have to be limited to data that's on your local drive, you can actually remotely connect to your database and pull data into the application. So for those of you who are running on enterprise systems, say Microsoft SQL, then Oracle, then all that can actually be linked to the application. So we'll get into doing the demo in a couple of minutes. So again, for emphasis, this is what the visualization would look like. So you have data or that's spatial or tabular on one side of your on one end, and then eventually you transform it into a very powerful analytics platform that enables you to get insights from your data. Hence the name Insights for ArcGIS, due to the power of what you're creating on the fly. So before we get into the demo, I want to take us through a couple of what we mean by attributes, how the application actually interprets different types of attributes that you might have. So let's look at an actual scenario. Let's say you have an Excel sheet, right? And the Excel sheet contains so the first column is counties. We have the 47 counties. Then the second column has county revenue, right? That's the other column. Then the other column has the population for that county. So any data you're using within analytics, anyone who's done analytics, or if you're new to analytics, any data that you use has two different types of attributes. The attribute table or the data set you're looking at can either have quantitative data or qualitative data. Now, when you're talking about quantitative data, this is when you're bringing in the numbers, right? When you say population is 30,000 in Nairobi, the column that holds the numbers in terms of population, that's what we call quantitative data. These are numerics or statistical fields. When you're talking about quality, is when you're talking about categorical fields, right? If you're talking about counties, Nairobi, Kisumu, Mombasa, that's what we call categorical data or qualitative data. Now, as we go on, these are the two sets of attributes we'll be interacting with, quantitative and qualitative data, and any data set you're handling would ideally fall under that, right? And normally they complement each other. A table would have quantitative data and qualitative data so that it makes more sense to the end user. And for the different visualization that we'll explore, what you're looking at is the different types of fields you might have on your table. Now, if you have a string field is, do I call them things like names of places? So that's what we call a string field. Things that are using alphabets or alphanumerics, then that's what we call string fields. A good example again would be counties. And so I'm going to take you through a couple of good visualization practices, which automatically are synced within the platform, so that you're actually not lost in terms of, do I use a bar chart, do I use a pie chart? The platform actually is able to sense that and give you the correct visualization to use. Now, for string fields, when you're talking about county revenue allocation, for example, or you're talking about the sales for 3 of your stores. You have, let's say you have Nakumat, that's in Gong Road, you have another one that's in town, and you have another one that's along Mombasa Road. If you're looking at the sales for each of the three stores, so would be the right thing to do. The most appropriate way to look at the visualization would be a bar chart, and that's the first thing you're looking at on the screen, right? If you're talking about string fields and you want to look at counties and maybe how it's related to maybe revenue or any other attribute, then the default field to use for string fields would ideally be bar chart. I'll also showcase that on the platform, such that if I drag the county field to the application, what are the different visualization techniques that I'm given? And the default one would be a bar chart. And then if you're talking about numerical fields, normally numerical fields would, maybe you want to understand how numbers are distributed across your table. And normally the default visualization for that would be a histogram. That's good practice to understand how are values distributed in your data set. Where are the highs, where are the lows? And the histogram answers that really well in terms of number fields. Then the other thing is ratios. You want to understand crime rate, right? How is crime related to population? Or how is what would be the other good example? How is revenue allocation related to population across the country? So that's ideally would be rate. Even when you're talking about speed per kilometer or the speed rate for a certain for anything, then that's what you're calling ratio or rate fields. And the default or good visualization technique for that would be a scatter chart, and that's what a scatter chart looks like. It puts for you the values and whether you're able to understand if there's a correlation between the two. Is it a linear correlation, or is there there's no correlation in the two attributes, such that if there's an increase in crime in population, does that mean there's an increase in crime rate? So a scatter chart really brings that out really well within the visualization. And again, all this is available within the platform. And then the other thing is time. When you're talking about time and you want to understand how has population changed over time, how has bird sightings changed with seasons? When we have summer, which bird sightings are we seeing in terms of months or in terms of years? Or another example is how is sales in a store dependent on probably weather? Are people buying more shades when it's hot? Do we need to have to back up our sales in terms of, do we need to think about the weather when you're putting in purchases on the store? And that's something that would also be really interesting to look at. And that's what you're talking about when you're talking about time. And the default for that would be a line chart where it actually shows you a time where you can actually clearly tell where the peaks are and where the lows are. So for this chart, you can actually see like 2008 had the highest, for example, number of accidents. So again, that's good practice. Anytime you have a date field in your data set, then the right visualization technique to use or good practice would be a line chart, so that you can understand how something is changing over time. And then last but not least is definitely location. And this is what now powers up everything that I've just talked about, simply because when you're talking things like in it, right? Simply because location enables you to understand relationship. From you're bringing in business intelligence integrated with location intelligence, which a whole data transformation allows you to understand how location influences your sales, how bad location influences petroleum spots to probably mine, and how also location influences you might have. And that's the power of the beauty of spatial and also able to integrate. To take us through the Insights demo, we're going to access the application, and then meanwhile, for those who have questions so far, kindly have them on the chat box, and then I'm sure you'll have them addressed as we go on. Maybe I'll just have one look at the chat before I do the demo. Access that. Okay, I guess the questions are being handled by the teammates, my teammates. So I'm going to take us through what Insights actually, how you access the application and how you log into the platform. Now for a start, I want us to access a totally new tab. Since I've already opened then we can go through the three. For those who have an online account and you already have the application licensed, when you go to ArcGIS.com, ArcGIS.com is our online portal. It's ArcGIS Online. And for those who have an enterprise system, then if you have the URL to your enterprise system, then you can also be able to access that. So I'll go to ArcGIS.com and press enter. So for today, we are going to use the web-based application. That's why I've first gone to the web to log into my portal so that I can access the Insights application from my portal. So I'll give it some time. Yes. So this is the landing page for ArcGIS Online. And then on the top right, is it right? Yes. On the top right, you have the sign in. So you click on, although I'd already signed in on mine. For the sake of for all of you to work with me. Okay, we'll use one that I'd already put in. So when you log in, this is my credentials, then I'll click on sign in. So this is you accessing the portal interface. Yeah. So after you've logged in, this is what they look. So you have different tabs up here. What is reading here? Gallery for Beautify Our Neighborhood. That's what we are calling our portal. So depending on whichever portal, if you're logging in, for example, into KFS, then it's probably Gallery for Kenya Forest Service. If you're logging in from ADRA, then that's the same name it will read. If you're logging in, depending on how you've named your account, will showcase on the platform. And then now after the system logs in, I think I'll just use one. This is my internet is not as fast. So just give it a couple of minutes for it to log in. Okay. Yeah. So when it logs in, the portal actually comes with all these pre-configured tabs. So maybe just to note that the interface is the same for anyone who's using the system. So you will all have, regardless of which organization you're, the interface is the same across the board. So there's no difference that comes in terms of you'll miss some tabs or you'll not have some tabs. The interface is actually mirrors each other. It's the same thing. So for you to access the Insights application, on the top right hand side, you notice you have these three icons. Are they three? This thing that looks like a square. So this square shows you all the applications you have access to, right? So you notice you have App Studio, Business Analyst, all these. Now for today, I want us to look at Insights. So for you to access it, you'll click on the Insights icon, and then it will actually launch for us to start creating insights from our data set. So as it's doing that, I want to walk us through the demo for today, so that we can actually work together in understanding the analytics bit of the data that I have, and then we can actually transform it to a workbook that gives us really powerful insights about the data that we have. So for a start, I have data for Nairobi. So this is Nairobi. The data is already on the portal, and what you're looking at is customer locations for a certain store. So for this demo, I decided to use a marketing data, but the scenario can actually switch from depending on what industry you're actually working with. And then on the data set, I want us to look at what the data contains. So these are customer dynamics for a certain store, and it's interesting because it actually contains a lot of data. Maybe just to point out that this is dummy data. It's not for any store that's existing out there. So we have the customer ID, we have the mode of payment. So the mode of payment is telling us if the customer actually used M-Pesa, cash, or anything. And then think of it as we'll use a scenario for store X, but think of it as probably Naivas. Naivas has a database, right? But how do they use that database to power up insights and come up with really powerful marketing strategies across the country, right? And now what you're looking at is like their database for customers. Again, this is dummy data. And then they probably have category. What did you buy when you walked in? So again, I've put in a couple of categories. You have jewelry, fragrance, handbags, all that. Then the date you actually ordered it, the items you bought, the price for that item, which store you actually bought it from, the constituency, and then the location of where you're living. And then what's actually also interesting, I decided to capture in segmentation, right? Where the customer, where we actually segmented the customers. So there's actually all these, whether you're from affluent estates or all this. So again, this is dummy data. So now we want to use this data set or this table to actually understand how can we use insights as NIVAS or as StoreX to understand how do we power up our data set or our database to enable us to come up with really strong marketing strategies. And then maybe just to go back to the slide I'd showcased about different types of data. This is what I meant. When you have data, your data is either categorical data or quantitative data. Now, mode of payment is definitely categorical data. These are all string fields: cash, M-Pesa, debit card, credit card. Those are string fields. That's what we call categorical data. The good you bought, whether you bought jewelry, handbags, bread, all that. That's what we are calling, again, that's categorical data. Then we have a time field, actually, right? The order date. And for this, we say that we'll actually look at how we can visualize all this. And then the items you bought, the price. Now, this is where now numerical fields come in. Pricing is actually a quantitative field. It's not a categorical field. So maybe just to give background to analytics and what powers up or what makes you decide to use one visualization and not the other. So now that we have a background of what the scenario is, and we want to now create a very insightful workbook for NIVAS, for them to understand probably when did they have peak sales, who prefers using M-Pesa, what is the sale, what does the sales look like with regards to socioeconomic dynamics in terms of where I live, right? Do people in Kasarani prefer to buy handbags than fragrances? That's what we want to understand on this data set. So we'll go to insights now that we have the scenario spelled out. So when you click the insights icon, this is actually where it takes you. This is the landing page. On the top bit, you have the different types of workbooks. You notice I have workbook 1, workbook 2. These are like recent workbooks that you have. And then on this other side, you have workbooks, models, dataset, pages, themes. Now I want us to start with the first bit, which is the workbooks. So workbook is where you actually create your insights data transformation at. So you're creating a powerful workbook that enables you to understand the customer dynamics for NIVAS. And then at the top bit, it actually lists for you the different folders you have. So these are my folders. So you wouldn't necessarily see this. For yourself, when you log in, you'll probably see your own folders. So for a start, you'll click on new workbook. And then it will now launch an interface to allow you to choose which data set you're using. For our scenario, we are calling it StoreX. As you can see up here, that's the name that's appearing on the tab up here, StoreX customers. So that's the data we are using. So when it launches, this is the launching platform. This is the window that it opens. These are all the data sets I have online. And then I want you to note what is on the left side of my screen. So you have Living Atlas, Upload File, Beautify Our Neighborhood. So it also allows you to incorporate data from Living Atlas. Living Atlas is a repository that Esri has for us, and you're able to actually pull in data from that end as well. And this, you also have access to this on each of your portals. And then for today, I want us to use our own file. Now I want to show you how to upload 2 different types of files, one that's hosted on your computer and one that's hosted on the online platform. So if it's hosted on your computer, you'll go to the upload file menu. And then you notice it actually has different options for you to browse my computer. Then I want you to note the different types of data set it actually allows. So we have CSV, we have Excel, you have shapefile, and you have GeoJSON. So those are the types of files it actually allows, which is quite comprehensive. For now, we'll use Beautify Our Neighborhood, which is data that's on my portal. And then the data set is called StoreX. Let's see, yeah. So this is the data I want us to use. When you actually view the details, this is I think I want the one for yesterday. This is more updated. So this is the one I've just opened to show you the different customers. And then as soon as you select your file, that's it. You'll just click on add. So as soon as it adds, you notice the first thing it's done. I hope you can all see my screen. You're noticing there is like a small card. It's written card 1, and then you have the customers put in on a map on that one card. So this is an insights workbook, what you're looking at. And this interface is where we are going to create really powerful visualizations and explore this data set. And then on the right side of the screen, you have the data set that's already been uploaded. Now it lists for you all the fields I have. Remember when we went through the scenario, I actually showed you what was in that table. So all this has been brought again. That's why when we talk about you interacting with fields in real time, that's what we mean. The same fields that are there are the same fields you're seeing on the same platform. So it's interacting with the data set as you work on it. You're actually directly accessing that data set. So you have customer ID, mode of payment, all this. So by default, we have the map. So for a start, I want us to understand where do we have majority of our customers. So on this side, you have filter, all these menus up here on the card. So for a start, I want us to use a heat map to just understand where are most of our customers. So I'll go to symbols, I'll change this and use a heat map. So a heat map actually shows you the highs and the lows in terms of density or concentration of your customers. So there you have it. That's the first visualization. And for this, you can actually tell where majority of their customers are. You notice towards this end, they don't have a lot of customers towards Langata, or so most customers actually along Thika Road and these sides of Eastlands. So that's the first thing we're actually understanding about this file. We didn't know that. So for our first, I'll just call these customers, or I'll call this that's the first insight. Then the next thing I want us to understand, I have this thing of normally when I'm working with data, I like visualizing the insights workbook and my data set at the same time. So I'll be shifting from my card, which is this one, to the table to see what I want to see. So the first thing I want to see is the mode of payment. That's the first column we have here. So I want to understand, what do our customers prefer as Naivas? Do they prefer M-Pesa or cash? So I'll go back to my workbook. Now I want you to see how it responds. I have mode of payment here. So if I drag this and drop it, are you noticing you have map, you have chart, you have table? It actually gives you that. So if I pick chart, it actually just drops it for me and breaks it down. So this is a categorical field, and that's what when we say a categorical field uses bar charts, that's what we mean. When you drag mode of payment, you actually have bar charts. Then what's pretty exciting is the fact that you actually are at liberty to change your chart. So if I don't like my bar chart, I can actually come here and say I want to see probably a bubble chart, right? That still works. I can still see that there's a difference in terms of what customers prefer. However, just to note that if you have a lot of modes of payment, if I had cash, if I had like 20 different categories or 10 different categories, then it's not recommended to use bubble chart. Why? Because the audience will be struggling with trying to figure out which circle is bigger than the other. It's the same issue you have when you're using pie charts. If you have a lot of categorical fields, then I can't tell which slice is bigger than the other. So that's just something to also note down, because even now it's not quite clear if debit card has more people using than online, but that's something to also think of when you're looking at visualizations. For this, I'll call this mode of payment for our customers. So that's a first. We have where our customers are located and what they prefer. Now I want you to note that when I click M-Pesa, it actually shows on the map where most of our M-Pesa customers actually shop, right? If I actually click cash, it actually shows you where those cash people are on the map. So it's quite interactive. And then the other thing I want us to look at, sorry, I'll go back to my table. So we have category. We have jewelry, we have the price, we have the location. I want us to work with the time field first. Can we know which seasons had the peak sales? So I'll go here on order date. I'll actually drag that. Can you note that on the map, when I drag order date, you notice the map is inactive. You know, you have three, you have map, time series, and table. I hope you can all see that. But the platform is powerful enough to note that for time series, you can't use a map. You have to use, and you can't use a table. That's why by default, those two are inactive. But the time series chart is actually active to show you that this is the right thing to do. So when you actually drag it to the time series, then there you have it, right? You can already see where you had your pixels. And then what's pretty interesting is the fact that when you actually look at this visualization, you can note that you have your pixels here, but I can actually decide that I actually want to get to granularity and understand when was the month that had the pixels. So it actually breaks down the month, right? But then for this, I want us to do something else. Let's add, do we have day of week? Let me see. the day of the week that was brought. So we have that as the highest peak cell, which was, can I see that? Okay, let me change this so we can actually see from Monday to whichever date. And then also the workspace is quite huge. So you notice when you have these three and you want to add more, you can actually go to more. Let me add. Sorry, there's something I'm looking for. Okay, before I figure that out, so we'll get back to that so we can see which time of the week actually had the highest time of cells. And then the other thing, so since I've already done that once, we'll come back to this and enrich this to just get better insights because it's not so clear from that. We actually want to understand if it was a Monday or a Tuesday. Average. Let's just look at peak cells. Then the other thing we can also explore is, let's go back to our table. So we've looked at time. What else can we get from this data set? I think it would be quite interesting to also understand based on segmentation. So segmentation is this angle here, segmentation and category. Can we actually understand what most people prefer in terms of segmentation? So that means understanding if for example, I live in an affluent estate. For example, if I live in Kitusuri, what do I prefer to buy? And if I live in another place that's has a totally different socioeconomic dynamics, what do I prefer to buy? So for that, I'll pick the both fields. I'll pick the let's look for that field, which is the segmentation. Yeah, the category, which is the product I prefer to buy, and the segmentation. So you can actually do that. You can select the two fields and drag them to the chart. And then you notice by default you have here the chart. I'll just drop it down there. And then for a start, I'll change this chart. And then I'll say I want to use a link chart. So a link chart actually allows me to understand if there's a link between what people are purchasing and where they live. So that's what it actually looks like. Now for a start, I want us to look at, so you notice you have here where people live and the product they bought. So for example, if I select, let's say Midtown singles, what do they prefer to buy? You notice it actually shows you they prefer to wear that. It actually shows you, when you scroll up, it actually shows you where Midtown singles live. This is where the heat map has gone. And then if I actually select what they prefer to buy, it's these three, fragrance and sunglasses. And then it actually also, the other cards are also interactive. It shows you they prefer using M-Pesa. Now let's try another generation. Let's try Generation X, which are quite young people. Now let's see where they mostly live. So most of them are here and they prefer to buy the same thing. Fragrance, handbags, and sunglasses, but you notice handbags is a bit, they prefer to buy more handbags. And then the also mode of payment is M-Pesa, debit card, and credit card. So you notice for them, they don't prefer cash or online payments. So that's a good insight also we've understood. So that means if you have a store that's located on this hotspot here, where Generation X are located, you have to have an option for them to pay by debit card or credit card so that we can actually nail all the sales that they're bringing into the store. And then the other thing I also want us to look at, let's see what else we can explore from this file. Sorry, let's go back to the table so that we can just, so we have, yeah, so let me showcase something else. On the map, maybe just to show you something else is the fact that the map, you're actually not limited to as to what you want to use on the map. You can actually decide to display on the map where the modes of payment are or where the different generations are actually living. So let's do that as well. So if I drag the location field to a new card, by default it's a map, but you can also do all this. So I'll use a map for now because I want to see where they're located. So by default you have our customers. But what happens when I drag in probably segment and drag it here? So let's see where they're all located. So you notice on the legend, you have the affluent estates are here. Then you have the brown, which is the lower middle. Then you have the midtown singles who are living here. And then you have Generation X as well, who are like a small dot here and here. So just to emphasize that for the map, you do not have to just use location. You can actually use it to understand quantities. You can actually use it to understand any other dynamic. So it allows you to do all that. So for now, I'll remove this because I just wanted to showcase that that's possible. So I'll now arrange this card, and then I'll show this. I'll just call it economic. Oh, sorry, preference. What each generation prefers to buy from the different stores based on where they live. And then the other thing I want us to look at is the other capability of the platform. So I'll just save this for now. Let's call it Store X. Customer dynamics. So the other thing I also want to showcase, which is the other power of the platform, is the fact that you're able to do, I'd mentioned initially that you can actually do table relationships. Now, table relationships are when you have two different data sets and you want to do a relationship to probably make it more comprehensive or make it have more details. So when you click on this table, you notice you have a capability of building relationships. For now, I won't do that, but maybe just to show you how it works. On this side of the side of the screen, it actually shows you the bit for bringing data together, and then on this side, it shows you that for now I only have one chart, so I can't really do a relationship. But ideally, you can actually be able to build in relationships from the relationships bit of the system. I think I'll try and finish this on time, and then we can actually use another data set to show how relationship works on this file. And then one more thing to showcase within the platform is the fact that, notice when I scroll up, we'd said that the charts are actually dynamic enough to show you that if someone picks, for example, cash transfers, you notice everything changes to show you when you had the biggest cash payments, right? And also where are they located, where were those cash payments, and also what did they mostly buy. So it will also show you that the cash payments were mostly from fragrance, sunglasses, and handbags. We had the least payments in cash from jewelry and scarves, which is also quite interesting to understand. And then the other thing I'd also want to showcase is the fact that the platform automatically records or takes a snapshot of what you've been doing. So you notice we started by adding data, then we created a timeline, then we did a density map. So it actually builds for you a model such that if I'm new to Insights or I'm probably your teammate and I want to understand how you came up with it, it actually takes for you a snapshot of that, which is quite powerful as well. The fact that you're not creating the model from scratch, it creates for you the model as you're working with the platform, which also is quite interesting bit of the platform. And then the other thing I'd also want to showcase is the fact that the workbook can still be shared to anyone, right? When you're talking about sharing, so I'll go back to my slide for just one bit so we can look at how the sharing actually works. And for the sharing, that's what will enable us to actually, for all of us in the audience, we'll actually be able to view the workbook and what I've created because of the sharing. So for the sharing, you have 4 different levels of sharing. You can share your workbook as private. So private means that no one else can access it but you, which is a security measurement that has been put in place. And this is also to safeguard maybe very, very sensitive information that you might have. Things like market insights are probably quite powerful insights that you probably wouldn't want another store to get a hold of. And the other thing is group. Group means that you can actually share your data departmentally. So you can actually have themes within the portal such that if I'm in the marketing team, I'm able to see the Insights workbook. If I'm, for example, in conservation or I'm in environmental planning, then I don't need to see marketing insights, right? And groups allow you to do that. It's a way that organizations can use to decide who gets to view what. And you can actually use departments for that. You can use project names. You can use all that depending on the dynamics of your organization. And then the other thing is also sharing your data with your organization. So it's important to note that you might actually be in the same organization. For example, I'll use Esri. So I might actually be in SGEA, but if I'm not a member of, for example, the marketing team, then I cannot be able to view their data. That's how it actually works. So organization means that anyone within your organization, if you share the data with the organization, anyone within that organization can see everything, right? But if I share it with a group and not with the organization, then it means that, yes, I'm part of that organization, but see the departmental files, which is also a flexible security measurement that's been put in place. Then the other thing is the public. So public means that anyone can view that file, whether I'm within your organization or outside. And that means that if I can be probably not working within SGEA, but if the data is public, I can be able to access it without having to log in or without having to have credentials. So those are the key ways of sharing your workbook. And this would actually, you notice for those who've used our platform, this cuts across everything else. If you're working with a data set, you're working with a dashboard, you're working with insights, you're working with a map, these are the same sharing priorities we are giving to you for you to be able to decide who gets to view what. So for now, I'm going to share that workbook before we get back to that file. So for the sharing component of it, the first thing is make sure you've saved your data set. Then the other thing I also want us to do now is to share this file. So I'll go back, I'll click on the Insights menu, and then I'll be able to see the workbooks that I have created. So we called it Customer Dynamics, no, Store X. So this is what I'll share. So you notice my workbook is now loaded as the most recent workbook. So I'll click here on share. And then for a start, since I want all of you to access it, I'll click on everyone. But you notice you still have, let me just not highlight this for now to just show you what the previous slide was about. So you notice you can slide your workbook with everyone, which is in bracket public, beautify our neighborhood, which is my organization, or and cancel, then that means that's a private file. No one can have access to it. So for now, I'll go to share and make it public since I want all of you to interact with that platform and just look at what dynamics you can understand from that file. Then I'll share. So I've made it public. So the next thing I'll do, I'll share this, I'll just paste this link on the chat box before I continue. How come I can't see your, oh yeah, I think it's this one. So just for a start, I want everyone to, maybe Penina and Douglas, you can try accessing that link as everyone else tries to. I've pasted it on the chat box. So just try, for everyone in the audience, you can try copy that link and paste it in the, what is it called? I've pasted it actually on the chat box. So just click on that link and see if you can actually access it. And then if you actually can, I'm going to try it on my end by going incognito to see if all of you actually have access to it before I go back to improving that chat. Penina, can everyone, have you been able to access it, or anyone in the audience?
Hi, May, I'm able to access it. It's actually working. It's working. I've managed to.
Okay. So maybe everyone in the a couple of people can also try in the audience. Okay. So Douglas and Penina have confirmed it's working. So we can have a couple of people. Yes, Ruth has confirmed. Yes. So that means it's actually working. So that's what the Insights interface would actually. Awesome. Okay. Oh yeah. So Sege has also confirmed it's working. And I think someone else has also confirmed it's working. Oh yeah, so that means it's you can all access it actually externally. So I want you to try interacting.
Sorry if I might interject. Sorry, yes, it's working, but then it's not interactive.
Oh, it's not interactive.
Yes, it's working, but it's not interactive.
Hi. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
So for you to plug in the interactivity, just click on anything. You can even click on M-Pesa and see how the map responds to show you where M-Pesa customers are and where you had the peak M-Pesa sales on the time series, as well as when you scroll down, you can actually be able to see the preference people in M-Pesa, what they actually bought. Just try clicking on anything on the mode of payment. Penina, maybe you can also try that and tell me if it's working. So try click on cash, or try click on even on the on like the time button, or even on the map. It would actually interact with all of them. Let me know if that's working.
Great, it is.
Zero, who asked that? Is it now working? It is, right? Okay, maybe just to showcase, thank you for asking that, maybe just to emphasize on a couple of things for the interactivity. When you come to the Insights chat box, I mean, sorry, not chat box, the workbook, you notice up here when you have have density, you have filter. So filter means you can actually filter out what you want to see. Do you want to see, maybe just click on it to see what it shows. So I can choose a field. Maybe I want to see just mode of payment, and I want to see probably just M-Pesa. So it's quite, you're actually interacting with the data on real time. So if I change it to M-Pesa, it should actually show me only M-Pesa customers. So that's also another functionality that's there. But what I also want to show you is the interactivity that has just been asked. So in an instance where you do not have interactivity on your workbook, kindly come to the Insights workbook page where you configured it, and make sure on this bit that you notice there's a part written enable cross filters. And this is actually available on all cards. Enable cross filters, on the time series, enable cross filters, and also on the preference. So you notice that if you have an issue with the interactivity on the other end, then you've probably not enabled the cross filtering. So always come here and just make sure that's actually checked. So mine by default is checked, but if I cancel it, then you'll all use interactivity on what I've just shared. So that's something to also note when you're working with a workbook. Ensure that interactivity is active, and then also remember that you want an expanded version of this, or probably to view it well, you can actually maximize the windows. Work with it, finish working with it, pull it back down, and then it still goes back to what it was initially. And then I think, let me just go see on the chat box if there's a question. Oh, so yeah, so someone asked if it's editable after sharing. So no, it's actually not editable since it's my workbook. So it's not editable. So I'm the only one who can edit it. You can't edit it. But if I edit it now, you'll actually reflect on your end. It's real time. So if, for example, I try and, yeah, let me delete something. So let me delete this workbook. And then I want you to do me a favor and refresh that. And then let me also drag this and add it here. So let's see how it actually changes. Then let me save this. So tell me if you can actually see the 3 and I've deleted the other one. So the edits that I do actually posted to it's the same, it cuts across the board. You'll actually be able to see the edits I've made on the interface. Can anyone confirm if you now only have 3 charts? Anyone? Okay, let me just check. Have you guys, can you try refreshing? Maybe, yes. Yes, good. So you have 3 charts only. Yes. So it's that fast. As soon as I update this, if I even decide to probably plug in something else, then it's that fast. You'll actually respond to what you've done. And like with this, with how technology is going fast and how powerful it is to get real-time analytics, then this really answers the question that you need to, you're asking fast enough. And then you're also able to understand dynamics within your data quite easily. Within a few clicks. And then the other thing I'd also share, let me just share something the same workbook I'd also done initially. Let me share this as well. This is also public. It's the same data, but I kind of explored more in terms of understanding what are the which are the days that have the pixels. I'll also share this on the chat, so you can see the additional capabilities you can add to that chart that I just made. So you can try accessing the new link. I've added like 3 more charts. So just click on this new link and see additional analysis you can actually have within your. I think that's it for today. Anyone who has a question or anyone who has something to add, we actually have 7 minutes to interact. So you can actually unmute your mic. And then for the questions that have not been answered on the